It's Kara from Health, Home, and Happiness, and today we're talking about how to know if your baby is ready for solids. So how do you know if your baby is ready for solids? And to sum it up, if my baby is sitting on my lap, takes a bite of my food, and then swallows it, I assume they are ready for solids. So I personally use the baby-led weaning approach to starting solids and seeing kind of where they are developmentally and whether they are ready for solids or not. And then as we get into more solids, I definitely do a parent-led eating approach, which is I choose what is served at the table and I choose the order that it is served in, and it is not really up for discussion, though I do keep their individual needs in mind and their individual preferences in mind as well. So for developmental milestones, and this is part of the baby-led weaning, which is kind of a set of guidelines for when you start solids, and that is that children can sit unassisted. They have teeth, which is thought that there's an enzyme associated with teething that once the first tooth erupts through, the child has that enzyme, is actually able to digest more of their food, which we know digestion starts in the mouth with saliva, breaking down the nutrients. And so until that first tooth erupts, which can be at varying times for different children, from like 4 months until 14 months, it's a big variety of when children get their first teeth. It's thought that once that first tooth erupts, maybe start paying attention and seeing if your child is ready, displaying other readiness signs for solids. And then having the grasp where they can pinch things between their first finger and their thumb. And so that's another developmental milestone that kind of indicates, based on this philosophy of when to start solids, that your child is ready for solids. So once they're hitting some of those milestones or all of those milestones, you might just want to see if they start taking food and swallowing it off of your plate. And this is a great time, parents, for you to clean up what's on your plate. I recommend avoiding grains, which even includes rice, even that famous rice cereal, and focusing on produce and protein, egg yolks if your baby tolerates eggs, dairy if your baby tolerates dairy. Those are all very nutrient-dense things, and if you can make your plates full of those kind of foods, then just sort of allowing a baby who is sitting on your lap anyway to sort of see what looks interesting to them. They're all good nutrient-dense options, and so we can kind of give them a little bit of freedom. As they're eating more and when they're ready to sit on their own in a high chair, I really like the high chairs that are adjustable, so their knees can be at a 90-degree angle. And once their knees are at a 90-degree angle, their trunk is stabilized and they're able to focus on the fine motor skills associated with eating, which eating is not only a nutritional thing, it's also a social activity, sitting at the family table, engaging in conversation, listening to the conversation around them, and it's a motor skill activity for our little ones as they're growing and learning so much. So they'll be mimicking you. They probably will want to have their own little individual plates, individual forks and spoons, even if they're not using them efficiently yet. It's a great thing to let them know that, yes, I'm providing you with these little tiny utensils because I have faith that you will learn how to use them eventually, and they'll want to experiment trying to copy you as you eat your food. And then once we've transitioned to having them at a high chair, I tend to be more in charge of what they eat when. So I'll put usually protein and vegetables down on their plate first, just 1 or 2 bites, and salt it sort of to their taste based on what they enjoy. And then once they've eaten those protein and vegetables, offer more if they want more. And if not, then that's when we follow up with something sweeter like a fruit or an applesauce, that sort of thing. So less preferred, more nutrient-dense foods first, and then the sweeter, more favored foods in the end. And this will just help you sort of set a pattern for this is what we eat. We eat the stuff that we need to grow first, and then the stuff that we enjoy more. And this is a great way to sort of prevent picky eating from even starting. I know that there's a lot of parents now that want to do the intuitive eating. They want to do intuitive eating with their children, and I've just found that having a parent-centered or a parent-directed approach works a lot better for my children. The intuitive eating might have been really helpful when we were eating all those Frankenfoods, the packaged foods, and kids were not getting the nutrients that they needed, and so their body was starving for nutrients. But in general, if you allow your children to pick what they eat, they're going to choose simple sugars and starchy foods, and they're probably not going to get the balanced nutrition that they need. So just having this very pleasant, very matter-of-fact, like we are going to eat this and then we will eat that approach can kind of go a long way into solving the picky eating that tends to pop up, not so much in 1 and 2 year olds, but 3 and 4 preschool age
tend to get quite picky, even if before they ate everything and absolutely loved it. So your mileage will vary. This is what we do, and I've had 3 children. I have very good eaters now, but I do have a more parent-centered approach than is kind of popular in the United States at this particular time. So that's how we do parent-led meal times. As I'm introducing solids, I tend to let my children breastfeed on demand while we're home. Once they're about 18 months or so, when they're not infants anymore and they're walking around, I don't nurse in public a whole lot, but I do let them sort of nurse at will at home. And that's kind of how I can accommodate for them knowing what they need and knowing how often they need to eat without me having to go and make them whatever they're asking for every 10 minutes. So breastfeeding on demand is sort of what I use instead of snacking. And then I will cover in another video why we don't snack and how my children, even starting at 2 or 3, like when they wean is when they start going 4 to 6 hours between meal times. And this seems to work really well for them. They are hungry at meals, they expect their meals, they eat really well, and then they have tons of time and attention to go play. So I think we're finding that a lot of kids, when they're sort of eating on demand all the time and snacking all the time, every time there's a struggle or a little bit of boredom, children sometimes are tending to go use a snack to alleviate that boredom. And that's something that just as parents, you might not agree with my particular way of doing this, but it's something to be aware of, that if you find that your child can't tolerate boredom and they're asking for snacks and you feel like all you're doing all day is providing snacks and cleaning up snacks, and you can't go do an activity for an hour or 2 without your child feeling like they need food, then sort of eliminating snacking is really common in other parts of the world. It's just not common in America right now. The book French Kids Eat Everything goes more into the cultural differences between not snacking and how children are definitely able to go hours at a time without snacking. But then, like I said, when they're super young, that's when I just use breastfeeding on demand. Very easy, portable source of not only nutrition that children need, but also comfort and avoidance of overstimulation. If they're getting overstimulated and just need some contact and closeness with mom, breastfeeding provides all of that. And sort of as they naturally wean, I let my children wean sort of on their own. Then that they just transition into eating 3 meals a day and finding other ways to get that contact and closeness from you.
I have 3 amazing eaters now. I'm really happy with how I started solids with all 3 of them. I feel like for me, it was the least stressful way to start, and it really just kind of set them up with good habits. So thanks for watching, and I will be back soon.